This is my unit I used Understanding by Design to create. It is titled Shapes in the Real World by Michelle Statham. I created this unit using the geometry standards for my 4th grade class. As you can see on my cover page, I have my unit title, Shapes in the Real World, grade level 4th grade, and my topic is geometry and math, like I said. The key words my students will be focusing on is quadrilateral, lines of symmetry, parallel, scalene, isosceles, and equilateral. In this 4th grade unit, my students will spend time between 2 and 3 weeks learning how to identify and classify different shapes and vocabulary. Students will focus on identifying two-dimensional shapes according to their attributes. Students will also learn to identify lines of symmetry. In the end, students will use their knowledge to create an iMovie with a riddle that displays the shapes and lines that they have found throughout the school and the real world. The goals I have used for my unit are the 4th grade math geometry standards. What I want my students to understand is that a shape can be identified by the number of sides, vertices, or angles. Some shapes can be combined to make new shapes. There are many types of triangles and quadrilaterals. Types of lines can help identify the type of quadrilateral. Angles are key to naming the different types of triangles. A two-dimensional figure is a shape with only 2 dimensions, and shapes appear in the real world as well. I want them to be able to take geometry and understand that it is more than just in math. The essential questions I want my students to focus on are how do we identify triangles? How can you tell the difference between quadrilaterals? What is a line of symmetry and how do you locate it? And where do we see triangles and quadrilaterals in the real world? At the end of the unit, I want students to have acquired a significant range of knowledge. I want them to be able to identify the 3 types of triangles, to understand multiple quadrilaterals and their attributes, how to identify lines of symmetry, to understand what a polygon is, and understand key vocabulary terms. When creating my unit, I had to think about what did I really want the students to be able to do to show me that they understood what exactly the geometry terms meant, as well as how if they understood what exactly the triangle differences were and the quadrilateral differences were. So for my performance task, I wrote out a task in the GRASP form. It says your job is to take pictures of shapes and lines and make an iMovie out of them. Your iMovie is targeted to show the principal how many different shapes there are in the building, as well as a riddle directed at your classmates. Your goal is to find 2 examples of different lines, 2 examples of triangles, and 2 examples of quadrilaterals around the building. The challenge you will have is that you need to think outside the box as you find shapes. You will record what shapes you found, where you found it, and how you know it is that shape. Your iMovie should show off different aspects of the school in a creative way and 6 different shapes you find when you try. Your iMovie will include a description of the shape and use complete sentences. You will create a riddle with 3 clues included in your iMovie that describe your shape to your classmates to solve. You will be graded by correctly identifying the shape, and students must use academic vocabulary to describe the shape. I have found in the past when teaching geometry, many times when you introduce words like quadrilateral versus square, rectangle, trapezoid, students tend to get a little bit more panicked. So the idea is that by using lots of hands-on activity, which is in my other evidence area of this blueprint, is that they're going to be using hands-on activities like Twizzlers to create shapes. They're going to be doing observation through Simon Says. They're going to go through online hunts. They're going to use geoboards. I'm going to look at their work samples. They're going to have quizzes. And I'm going to use alphabet letters to help them figure out what symmetry really is. Hopefully, with all these different hands-on activities, they can put meaning to what the words really are. I think it is very important that students use self-assessment and reflection when they are learning about new concepts. Because of that, they will be recording vocabulary, they'll be reflecting on what they're learning, and they will work with me to make sure that they are understanding. When thinking about my performance task, I really had to figure out how to break it down. What exactly did I want to assess during this task? I really wanted to make sure that the students recognize that the different shapes and that you tell them by the different characteristics. If they have parallel lines, what type of angles are in the shape, and that's how they can tell what exactly that shape is. I wanted to make sure that it was standards aligned and that the students were going to grasp the entire concept. The authentic performance task that they'll be doing is creating that iMovie. With hands-on technology, making an iMovie, they can manipulate not only what pictures they take, they can have choice in if they want to make it simple, if certain students want to make it elaborate, if they want to include more than 6 pictures. There's a lot of different choice, even in one specific app. They can pick music, they can record their voice, they can have different backgrounds for those shapes. I really wanted to pick an application that could help them and also for something that they could use in the real world. When they're doing that, I want to make sure that I'm walking around and identifying that students are using the correct vocabulary while they create this iMovie. They're also creating a riddle so I can see, does this student really understand this? And see how the class can guess and understand so the class is engaged when we're watching the iMovies. The criteria they're being evaluated by, I've created a rubric. On that rubric, they're going to be correctly identifying 2 lines, 2 quadrilaterals, and 2 triangles based on their lines and angles. They're going to create an iMovie that correctly identifies 6 shapes and lines and how they know they've identified that shape correctly, where they found it, using academic vocabulary to describe the shape. I want it to be creative and original, and then they will have that riddle with the 3 different clues. I've included a photo rubric so students really know what's targeted. They'll have to have their quadrilateral 1, 2, their different triangles. They'll have to name them. They'll have a picture of their photo right there where they found it in the school. They'll describe the shape and write how they know what it is. Students can add comments if they want to, and then I have room to add comments as well. I also created a rubric for the iMovie. In this, I wanted students to make sure if they're going to earn all those points that they have those 6 different photos included, that they're photographed, that they're using academic vocabulary, that they have at least 3 complete clues for that riddle, and that there's some creativity involved. Lastly, I included the reflection that I want my students to fill out at the end of this activity. This will also be something that I use to see if the students understand. They'll talk about their favorite shape, what they wrote their clue for, what their clues were. This is a way for them to brainstorm for their iMovie as well as be prepared and for me to know what they've learned. I'll be able to assess their knowledge by them writing the 4 different quadrilaterals they've learned and what they can be identified by, as well as the 3 different triangles and 3 different types of lines. Lastly, when I wanted my template, I really wanted to have different hands-on activities that the students could do by watching a YouTube video, using Twizzlers, the Geoboards, etc. I've incorporated all of those in the order that they'll be taught and what exactly they'll be doing. And then I have my calendar that kind of walks it through moment by moment what the students will be doing. So introducing polygons at the beginning because that's the basis, and then going into quadrilaterals. That'll be a lot of information for them to handle, so making sure we have a review day in there. Then going into angles and triangles and reviewing, checking on congruent lines and symmetry. And then they'll have that week to work on that project. Lastly, I've included 3 different lesson plans in the material. I've included classifying triangles, where the students really are getting to name those triangles and know what they are. They'll know the different types of triangles, the different types of angles. They'll be using technology and watching videos. I have them engaging each time by watching a different video so they have that song that they can get in their head and can learn with movement. And then I have a small group time where I can differentiate, and I have each rotation written out and what I'll be doing with each of those groups. Again, the next one, they'll be classifying triangles. Or quadrilaterals. It's a 2-day lesson. And in that lesson, they'll be learning all the different types. They'll be watching YouTube videos. They can get on iExcel as another technology tool. Students can engage in that YouTube video. They can take notes. They're going to have a note-taking sheet to keep all of this new knowledge present. They'll be learning about lines and introducing what is a parallel line and how do I know if it's parallel. They'll work on that flip book, practice with geoboards, and then they'll work with me again so I can make sure that they really understand what they're doing. I'll be differentiating again for those high and those low students, and then checking for understanding at the end. The last one I created for my lesson was a symmetry lesson, and students will be recognizing what a line of symmetry is and really how they'll be doing that through different modes of learning. They'll have folded painting experience, they'll be using pattern blocks, and then they'll have each letter of the alphabet where they'll fold in half and see if it really is symmetrical. Overall, this is how I have created my geometry unit using the Understanding by Design. And I really hope my students are engaged and really enjoy all the different activities that are planned throughout it, and that they'll really meet my goals that I've set for them. Thanks.